They rain and they snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds. At all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way that you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. And you leave them laughing when you go. And if you can, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions that I recall. I really don't know love. I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds. I've looked at life that way. Oh, but now, old friends, they're acting strange. And they shake their heads and they tell me that I've changed. Well, something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. It's life's illusions that I recall. I really don't know life. I really don't know life at all.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special momentum boost with our founding director and constant inspiration, Lori Palatnik. As many of you already know, 30 days ago, Lori lost her beloved mother, Mrs. Phyllis Zelcer, Fega Butchmarya. And I have to personally add that both my husband and myself knew Phyllis and loved her. My husband, Jason, was especially attached to her. And let's face it, you know what they say about the apple not falling far from the tree? Well, Glory is the apple from a strong and mighty tree. How could someone not see and learn from the power of that original tree? So in Jewish tradition, after the burial, there's a 7-day period of mourning that we call the shiva. In fact, the word shiva comes from the number 7 or sheva. This is a time of the most intense mourning. After the shiva is completed, mourners will customarily resume some of their regular daily activities, but many may refrain from attending parties or listening to live music or engaging in any other forms of public entertainment for a whole year. But at the 30th day, we mark what's called the shloshim, which also takes its Hebrew name from the number 30. So there are many ways to commemorate a shloshim. Many will give to charity in the merit of the deceased and share support and prayers, and many will recite psalms or in Hebrew Tehillim. Many will use this date to speak of the lessons learned from the person that they've lost, to spread that with others in order for people to gain wisdom and inspiration and strength from their memory. When we live our lives differently because a person lived and commit to carrying on their legacy because they died, it is a merit to that person. When a person does mitzvah in the memory of a person, we say that their neshama, their soul, should have an aliyah, an elevation in the next world. And tonight, our beloved Lori Palatnik will do just that in a session called When Life Takes a Turn. How do we know what God is telling us? Please welcome Lori.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. I love you very much. And thank you, everybody, every single one of you, for taking the time to come on tonight. It means a lot to me. It's a lot of you, and it just brings me a tremendous amount of comfort. And I also want to thank you for those of you who were with me during Shiva, for those of you who sent me countless messages. I'm still catching up on them. And for those of you who keep checking in on me, it's very, very, very deeply appreciated. So my mother was a very highly intelligent and a woman and a constant seeker of knowledge. It asks in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, Ezehu Chacham, who is wise? And the answer, the one who learns from everyone. So my mother was always taking courses, and when she had 4 kids in 5.5 years and lived in the suburbs, but she was like a free spirit, like poetry and writing and travel. She was basically like a hippie beatnik in the suburbs of Toronto, married to a very she was very out of the box. Married, my father was a very in the box person. She was tie-dyeing our clothes, and she was exposing us to Joni Mitchell, as you were listening to, and Judy Collins, and the Beatles, and Simon and Garfunkel, and that's what I was raised on. And once we were all in school, she decided to go back, and she wasn't like the other moms. She wasn't making casseroles, and she wasn't joining the PTA. She went back to university at night, and she got her BA, and then she got her Master of Education, and she became a social worker, and then she had a private therapy. She was a therapist. She had a private practice, and she was always learning. Out of 4 kids, 3 of us ended up becoming much more Jewishly knowledgeable and Jewishly observant as young adults. But that's not the way we were raised. We were raised in a Jewish family, but we didn't go to Jewish schools. We really didn't live in a Jewish neighborhood. And I always thought we were kind of different because my mother was a hippie, but I think we were kind of different now, I realize, because we were Jewish. And that comes with certain cultural and certain religious things that even though it gets watered down through the generations, it's there. And I remember our at this time of year, during at the end of December, the whole neighborhood would be lit up, and with across the street. It looked like Macy's. Like it was like our neighbors across the street had like their front door was like a Christmas package, and they had on the rooftop, they had like Santa and all the reindeer, and Rudolph's nose was like, flashing. And then and on the front yard there was like a little manger, like, and all the mishpacha were in there, and music was playing. And we were like the darker house, but our candles every night, and we're lighting up our home and planting seeds within us. So I have to tell you that often when, and maybe you've had this in your own experience, either your kids are becoming more observant, or maybe you became more observant, and your parents, it was not exactly an easy thing for your parents to adjust to. And we always told my parents that it's not in spite of you that we became more Jewishly observant, it's because of you. And this seed that my mother planted within us to seek knowledge, to make educated decisions in life. And just like she wasn't like all the other mothers, she planted within us the sense of being who you are. It says we're taught in Mishlei, in Proverbs, that you should educate a child according to their way, not your way and not the other kid's way, according to their way. My mother saw us, and she saw every person. The story I told at my mother's funeral was the one that really that struck me, when when you're thinking about, like, what are you going to say at your parents' funerals? Like, what are our kids going to say at ours? And the story that came to me was when I was engaged many years ago, and we got engaged in Israel. I met my husband there, and we hadn't met each other's families, and we got engaged, and then we got on a plane to meet each other's families. So we went to Toronto first. He met my family. Then we got on a plane, and we went to Chicago, where my husband's from, and I met my future in-laws, and they had all these like wedding showers. And I went from Toronto with my mother and my sister-in-law Jenny. And one night we were in our hotel room, and Jenny was sleeping. And like, I'm getting married and you're thinking deep thoughts. And I said to my mom, I said, Mom, you know how parents say like that you love all your kids the same? And she said, yeah. I said, it doesn't make any sense. She goes, what do you mean? I said, come on, you have a personality, we have a personality. It can't be you love us all the same. It's got to be you have a favorite. She goes, you're right. Who do you think it is? And I said, me. And she said, no, but all of you say that. Now, first of all, I have to tell you, I was a little bit devastated. Like it was like I'm walking to the chuppah and psst, you're adopted. It's like finding out something. So it's like, what do you mean I'm not the favorite? And then I thought, what a great mom. All of us, our whole lives, felt sorry for our brothers and sister because we knew we were the favorite. But if you were with her, even if you weren't her kid, you felt like you were her favorite, that there was nobody else at this moment that was more important to her than you. Being present with people, seeing them as individuals for who they are. My mother saw the best in everyone, but greater than that is that she helped that person see the best in them. Wow. Now, there's things that I have gone through in the last few weeks that I want to share with you how important it is, because some of us have been through this and some of us are going to go through this. So it says if you've ever read the book Tuesdays with Maury, and Maury is the author is interviewing Maury, who was his beloved teacher from Brandeis, and he was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. And Maury says some very profound things in the book before he dies. And one of them, he says, everybody knows they're going to die, but nobody believes it. Believe it. It's going to happen to us, and it's going to happen to the people we love. And I have to tell you that Judaism has so much wisdom and has a system of understanding in terms of not just death and mourning, but in dying, in dying. And when you understand and you have knowledge before you're in the middle of it, because when do we seek out this knowledge? When we're in the middle of the most heartbreaking, confusing, emotional experience of our lives. You should learn about it beforehand. So just like my mother taught us, like, be a person who seeks knowledge, who seeks wisdom. You may not need it now, but if you don't have it, how can you apply it down the road? Some of the things I'm going to explain, you might think, oh, I wish I would have known that. Oh, I messed up. I did the wrong thing with my loved one. Don't think like that. We can only do as much as we know. And that's why it's important to know. So one of the things that I learned is that your goal is not only to make the right choices and the right decisions when you are going through life and making life and death decisions in terms of treatment and for your loved one, but you want to maintain within the family a sense of shalom, a sense of peace. Even though I told you 3 out of 4 of us became Jewishly observant, we're still very different people. Like, I always thought I naively thought like, oh, all religious people are the same. All Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, they're all the same. If you're this label, you're this. And it's not true. You know it's not true. Within the Orthodox world, there is such a spectrum of differences. There's more differences than any other stream of Judaism, from the Hasidic to the Misnagdim to the modern to the and it's beautiful. It's all different expressions. Vive la différence. And when I was on my journey, I had to figure out, where do I fit into this? If I believe that after my investigation and my journey, that I came to the conclusion that there is a God, and that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, and that we are supposed to be a light unto the nations. But where do I fit into this? Like, what community? And I want to say that being part of a community is so important, through joyous events and through painful events. Be part of a community. And sometimes our communities can shift and change depending on how we shift and change. And our community is not necessarily the person who lives beside you, or like the people who live on your street. I mean, the people who share your values, the people who are there for you, no matter what. So if you, again, just a very strong caveat, if you for some reason didn't know this, and you perhaps did something that wasn't in line with Jewish law, you didn't know. But it's important to know. So maintaining shalom, for those of you who have siblings, you're going to have to navigate the loss of your parents with them. And again, even though 3 out of 4 of us are Jewishly aligned, we have different personalities. And my husband taught me, and I really learned, that no 2 people have the same parent. No 2 people have the same parent. That means that I remember when my father passed away 5.5 years ago. So we had to, a few months later, like, we had to decide like what to put on his tombstone, on the matzeva. And so we got on a family chat, like a conference call, and my sister said, oh, why don't we put this? And my brother and I were like, what house did you grow up in? Like, that's not how we saw my father at all. We're able to come to a mutual conclusion of something meaningful to put on his tombstone. But for my sister, that's how she saw our father. So no 2 people have the same parent. And you know that it goes back millennium of people you see in the Torah itself, the conflict that can happen between siblings and sibling rivalry and different relationships. And sometimes when you're going through something heavy, a lot of things come up. So one of the things is to make decisions now in order to preserve the peace that you want, because after the parents pass away, I can't tell you how many families I know that the parent passes away and the siblings don't speak to each other again, like the adult children stop speaking to each other, or the parent didn't do the right thing in terms of understanding what to leave, and like, and she loved you more and he loved, like, it was like the stuff that goes on is terrible. And the last thing a parent wants is to leave this world and leave their kids in conflict. That you want the opposite. Somebody said something very simple to me, but it was so profound, and I never thought about it. The longest relationship of your life is with your siblings. You have your parents for a certain amount of time, your spouse for a certain amount of time, and your kids for a certain amount of time. The longest relationship of your life is your siblings. And to maintain peace with different religious, political, personality, the in-law spouses who married in, to try to navigate this intensity with peace is very hard. So one of the ways to be able to do this, and something my parents put into effect, was they decided to, they chose somebody who would have medical power of attorney. Medical power of attorney. That means they were going to make the medical decisions, because you can't have everybody deciding. You can't do this as a group. And sometimes you have to make very quick decisions, and not everybody's on the ground or in the same time zone. So they were very smart, and they chose my niece, Sarah, who is a pediatric oncology nurse and is the oldest of the grandchildren, and is an amazing, amazing person. And she was able to take, my parents made like that living will of the things they want and don't want at the end of their life. And she was able to take their living will and bring it to a rabbi, a rav. There's a difference between a rabbi and a rav. So my husband always says that he's a rabbi, he's not a rav. Like a rav is like the rabbi's rabbi. Is somebody whose expertise is medical ethics and end of life issues. And she was able to take their wishes and bring it to the Rav, and he was able to go over it and to be able to, based on Jewish law, to be able to help my niece, guide us and guide the medical team to be able to fulfill my parents' wishes, also within Jewish law. So there are do's and don'ts, and here are some of them. So number one, you can't kill people. You can't kill people. So you would think like, oh, well, that's a given. It's not a given anymore. There are different, my mother died in Canada. They have this thing in Canada called MAID, medical assisted something death, and individuals with death. Like they assist you to die. And they've basically created a way that a person can die if they choose to die. We don't own our life. If there is no God, do whatever you want. If there is no God, then it's like whoever dies with the most toys wins. I'm talking about a world where there is a God, that there is right and wrong, that this world isn't all there is. In the scheme of our eternity, this world is a blip. It's a blip. It's a blink of an eye. But what happens in that blip literally affects all of our eternity. You have a body and you have a soul. Your body is temporary, but it houses your soul. Your soul is eternal. The choices we make here have eternal consequences. And I always say that when you learn about these things, it may not change the way you die, but hopefully it'll change the way you live. When you realize, I'm a neshama, I'm a soul, and my choices here matter, not just for now, but for eternity, forever and ever. Amen. So just because Canada it passes laws, and just because you feel a certain way, and again, the last thing you want to do is you don't want your family to suffer. You don't want your loved one to suffer. You don't want to suffer. And I would just kept praying for two things. Number one, that my mother wouldn't suffer. And number two is that there should be shalom. There should be peace between the four siblings, even though we were all very different and it wasn't so simple. And that we would, and the fact that my parents already chose somebody who wasn't one of the adult children, somebody outside. And when it comes to financial things, also, I would strongly suggest, that you choose somebody outside, somebody who's not one of the adult children, because there can become terrible sibling things. And again, the siblings who, your siblings marry people, and everybody's got an opinion, and everybody has feelings, and everybody feels like, so if you have somebody objective on the outside fulfilling the wishes of your loved one, it creates a sense of peace. All right. Cremation is completely forbidden, with no exceptions. Completely. When I grew up in Toronto, it was unheard of. I never went to a funeral where there was cremation. Now it's starting to happen in Canada. In the United States, it is now the majority of the choice of Jews when they die that they are cremated, or the choice of the people who are making those choices. I've seen ads in papers, in Jewish papers in Florida for Jewish cremation. Jewish cremation. It is completely forbidden. So what do you do? What do you do if you have a parent who says, I want to be cremated? So my mother used to always say, like, I want to be cremated, cremate me, and scatter my ashes at the cottage. So years later, this is what she told me. So then years later, she called me up and said, forget it. I've decided I'm going to rot beside your father forever. So I said, Mom, 3 out of 4 of your kids are knowledgeable, observant Jews. We were not going to cremate you. So what do you do if parents put things in their wishes? These are my wishes. So years ago, I was in Toronto, and we had just moved to Forest Hill area, which is a very Jewish area, not so observant. And we plopped ourselves down there, and we built a community called the Village Shul. So I remember when I was first there, I was like, oh, and all my neighbors are Jewish, and so I'm going with all my kids. Everybody had 2 kids and a dog, 2 kids and a dog, 2 kids and a dog, and we just kept having more kids. So I remember I was walking by one day, and my neighbor was mowing his lawn. And I never met him before. I go, hi, I'm, what, we just moved in. I'm Lori Palatnik, these are my kids. And we were chatting, and he told me that his father had passed away like 2 days before. They just buried him. And I said, like, oh, are you sitting shiva? Can I come? And he said, no. My father said, it was his wishes. I don't want my kids to sit shiva for me. So I said to him, now that your father's in the next world, he is screaming from heaven, please sit shiva, please. We can only do as much as we know. If a parent, and what I would suggest, and many people have dragged their parents to me, parents who want to be cremated, and to talk to me about what Judaism believes and why cremation should not be a choice. They can always choose to be cremated, but make it based on knowledge. Understand why we don't do this. And after the Holocaust, when they did this to us, how could we possibly choose this? And that the fact that you have a soul, and that you're going to need your body one day, and all the things that nobody ever taught us in Hebrew school. So if you can, for yourself and for your loved ones, make sure they have important knowledge and conversations with people who are not you. Don't try to convince them. It's too close. It's too complicated. I had to let my mother come to it on her own. But there was no way I was going to cremate my mother. Like, there was no way. But I'm glad that she came to it on her own. But I would have brought her to somebody who wasn't me to be able to talk to her about it. In terms of organ donation, there's certain things that you're allowed to do and certain things that you're not. There's a lot that you can do, and there's something called HOD, halachic organ donation, HOD. Don't just sign your way on your driver's license, because they can do things that actually cause to kill you in order to harvest your organs. It's a whole thing, and it's something to look into. But HOD, halachic organ donation card, that you can get. Like, I myself, some of you know, I donated my kidney to a woman years ago. It was the greatest experience of my life. So there's certain things that you can do, and certain things that you should do, and certain things you shouldn't do. And again, knowledge is bliss. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is death. Knowledge is bliss. So please become knowledgeable. Can you go against your parents' wishes? Yes, you can. Okay? Yes, you can. If they're making it not based on knowledge. Shloshim. So why the 30-day mark? So it says the Jewish people wept for Moshe Rabbeinu, for Moses, for 30 days after he departed. Moses, who was father and mother to all the Jewish people. When I was in the middle of Shiva, I don't know how many of you have gone through this. Shiva was so much easier than after Shiva. Because at Shiva, everybody walking in and people who flew in and turned their life upside down to come and bring me comfort. As somebody once said, most of life is showing up. I don't even remember what everybody said when they came, but I remember that they came, showing up for each other. So Shiva, everybody who came, they knew I was in pain. They knew they were coming into a place where my heart was broken. And they acted accordingly, and they spoke accordingly. And then Shiva's over. That Shiva was like a cocoon. And all the love that I poured into the community that we built in Toronto came back to me. I don't think I have ever gone to a Shiva or paid a Shiva call more than once during that week. Like you pay the Shiva call and then you're done. I can't tell you how many people came every day, including Adrian. Every day. They carried me through it. And then you step out of Shiva. And it's hard because the Uber driver and the airplane attendant, the flight attendant, and the woman checking you out at the grocery store, they have no idea what you're going through. So there is an unusual blessing that we give to people when we use a very unusual name of Hashem. Hashem, God has many names. Some are specific for the Jewish people. Some are for all the nations. Some are male in connotation. Some are female in connotations. God's not a man. God's not a woman. But there's female and male aspects. Some are invoke mercy. Some invoke justice. So the name that we use when we leave a mourner, one of the unusual names of God that we use at this point is Hamakom. Hamakom means the place. We're saying God is the place. And a lot of the grammar of the blessing is in the future tense. And now I understand it. Because everything I'm going through now, it's harder. Because I have to get back to life and I'm working and I have to interact with people who have no idea what I'm going through. And even the people who know I'm going through, like they don't want to keep hearing about it, or they want to know I'm okay. But I'm not so okay. But Hamakom. God is in this place too. God is in the Uber. God is on the plane with me. And God is in the checkout line. So all of us, because since October 7th, we're all going through a very, very hard time. But Hamakom. God is in this place too. The women who have come on Momentum and the men, when you're at Kfar Aza and you see the horror and you're clinging to one another. But then you have to get on the plane and come home. And even if you explain to them what you saw, they don't get it. And a lot of our perhaps non-Jewish colleagues and neighbors and even family and friends, they don't really get it. But Hamakom, God is with you in this place too. And please, God, just like you go through the stages of grief after losing a loved one, we also are going through these stages, but we're still in the middle. We're still in the middle of the heartache. But please, God, very soon, we will dance again.
Amen.
And our loved ones, they're dancing in heaven too. And they want the best for us too. And I've seen amazing things happen since my mother left this world in the family. She's rooting for us up there. And I miss her very much. So thank you. Thank you for listening. And I just want to say that one of the things I'll ask you to do, perhaps if you've, on the shloshim, it is customary and a beautiful and a really an important mitzvah to give tzedakah in memory of a person. So we've created, people asked, and we created Momentum, a scholarship fund, a tzedakah fund, in memory of my mother, that you can contribute to, no matter what you want to contribute. And it is something that is going to do. My mother loved Israel, and she loved what I did. And even though she had dementia and she was in and out of things, she, one of the last things she ever said to me when she was very with it was, she just turned to me and said, "I'm so proud of you." She loved Momentum. She loved what we did. She loved the women, and she was at the front row of every talk I ever gave. And she has children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren in Israel. And she understands, as a mom, where everybody was her favorite, nothing would make her happier than imparting that to other mothers and helping them to be even greater. So if you would like to contribute to this scholarship fund, especially tonight, which is the shloshim, as we speak, it begins tonight and ends tomorrow night. I thank you. Thank you.
Lori. Lori. Can somebody bring me up so I can be beside my friend? Hi. I love you. I really love you. Some questions. Are you up for it? Are you up
Yes,
to
of course.
it?
Of course.
Okay, the first. What was some of the more useful things that people said to you? Not the things that you wish you'd never heard. One of the things I've noticed is people will often say when someone is elderly, well, she lived a long life, and they don't understand that the longer you've loved someone, the harder it is to lose them. What were some of the supportive kinds of things that a person can say during the shiva when they feel that their tongue is tied?
So, Jewish law and custom is that really what you're supposed to do is when you pay a shiva call, and a lot of us mess up, believe me too, because it's uncomfortable. You're supposed to come and say nothing. The first thing you're supposed to do is just sit in front of them, look at them, and you don't say anything. Why? Because there's nothing to say. Of course, if the person speaks and wants to talk about ideally, you're supposed to speak about the person who passed away. Asking a person, "How are you?" is for sure not the thing to ask. How are you? Like, there's no words to describe. How am I? I'm heartbroken. I'm filled with grief. Like, how am I? So when I was sitting shiva for my father, I actually learned, because that was the first time I sat shiva, I actually learned what to say at a shiva from all the things that people said to me. First of all, people coming meant the world, just being there for me. I'm here for you. I feel your pain. I'm with you in your pain. That's why the Talmud says to say nothing. Just be there. And if the person speaks, wants to speak about their loved one, of course, that's where you go in, and you should share, ideally, if you knew the person, share any story or anything. But the two things that people said to me when my father passed away, and I learned, this is what I say now to people. Somebody called me and she asked me, she said, "Tell me something about your father that will help me be a better person."
Oh,
And it so helps me when I ask people that now. It's like to sum it up in one thing. It's like really, and people tell me that it helped them through the whole shiva to be able to articulate my mother, my father, my brother, this is who they were. So, and it says like during the shloshim, and tonight is the last, this is the last 24 hours, you can grab the midot, the good qualities of that person. It's available for us to take. And so learn about them because you want to take them. I remember when a couple of great Rebbitzins passed away, Rebbitzin Youngreis, I was like just trying during the shloshim just to grab her sense of leadership and her sense of courage and her sense of that I wanted. And the second thing that brought me comfort was when I left Shiva and I flew back to Israel. And Rabbi Yehuda Weinberg, who's our rabbi, Rabbi Noah Weinberg of blessed memory, his son, he came up to me and he said, "Your father always knew what you did, but now he sees it." And that brought me unbelievable comfort, unbelievable comfort. And I can feel it. And I feel it now. So it's like my mom and dad, yes, they came to whenever I came to speak in Toronto, they were in the front row, and just like they went to all my recitals when I was growing up, and they always came. But now they see it. Now they see it. And we need to live our lives. We only exist because of them. Did they make mistakes? Yes, they did. Okay. Do we make mistakes as parents? Yes, we do. But they gave us life. And there's missing parts. So you have to take what they gave you and work hard and fill in those missing parts and go somewhere in life. And when you do, and as you said, Adrian, at the beginning, when you live your life differently because they lived and because they died, it's merit to their soul. When we say that it's an aliyah neshama, that it's a rising up of their soul, it means they get greater pleasure in the world to come. They move closer to the ultimate, to the Almighty, basking in God's glory. Why? Because everything we pour into our kids here, into our students here, into anybody who we help here, when they make changes in their life and they live a life, it's not just for them, it's also for us.
When my father passed away 15 years ago, I really did not know what to do or how to move through the world. And your book, Remember My Soul, and a book by Rabbi, is it Maurice Lamb, The Jewish Way in Death and Dying. Those two were with me, Death and Mourning. They were with me every minute. But it was your book that helped me navigate my emotions. And even though I didn't exactly understand what I was doing, I found that in doing some of those things, it became apparent through the process. So a year ago, or when maybe it was during COVID now, we had Lori record a digital version of the book Remember My Soul.
Yeah, it's now an audiobook, a free audiobook.
A free audiobook. So I would like us to put the link here, Remember My Soul. You'll see that you can still get the hardcover book on Amazon, and we'll put the link in the chat here, and the free audiobook. For me, it was invaluable. I have given that book to scores of people. It doesn't matter what your ritual observance level is. It speaks to all of us. It's a time where we're open, perhaps more open than any other time, to the possibility of a metaphysical kind of existence. It can be a pathway in. And I feel like it would have been useful for me to read it a year, 2 years before I needed it. And so one of the things that you've said that really has stuck with me is to pre-plan, to have a strategy that will ensure peace in your family by ironing those things out before. Something I have not done. And I'm going to do that, Blenader, God willing, when I get home. And I'm going to do it in the merit of an elevation of the soul of your mother, who I think you know my husband adored, became
He
so
adored
devoted to
him.
her. But Lori, most of all, back to the apple tree thing. As I got to know your mother better, I understood a lot more about you, where you came from, the gifts you've brought the world. And I want to say on behalf of all of us, and there are hundreds of us on this call and hundreds who will watch the recording, if we could give you half our heart, we would. We love you and we wish you strength and wisdom. And we want to thank you for opening up our hearts and our minds and our souls. And we pray, all of us, I know I speak for all of us, that your beloved mother's holy soul have an elevation in the merit of everything you taught us tonight. May we all emulate her fine qualities to be there for every child the way she was there for you and your siblings, to love them, to accept them, to be interested in what they were doing. I know that it's a long and circuitous journey, grieving and mourning, but I am grateful to you. We are all grateful to you for sharing this with us at this time. May you be well till 120 plus 3 days, and everyone you love. May your grandchild have a full and complete recovery. And may all of us find the strength to have the hard decisions and to find a person with whom we can ask the right questions. And even if the answers make us uncomfortable, may we all have the pleasure and the joy of knowing that we did the right thing, even if it was hard.
Amen.
We
Amen.
love
Amen.
We love you, Lori. We love you. We love you. We love you. Good night, everybody. We should all be well.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. Looked at clouds that way, but now they only